I am Michael Boos, and this assignment is for Dallas Christian College Alternate Teaching Certificate Flex Program, course number 4309, Management and Discipline, for the spring 2017 semester. For this assignment, I watched the movie entitled Mr. Holland's Opus. The movie begins in 1965 and continues to 1995, taking place in Portland, Oregon. It is the story of a musician, Mr. Glenn Holland, who works gigs to support himself and his wife, believing his life's calling is to be a full-time composer. He starts teaching music in high school for some easy cash, thinking the job will leave his evenings and weekends free to compose. He calculates that after a few years of teaching, he will have enough savings to quit teaching and become a full-time composer. He does not see his teaching as a calling. He simply considers teaching as a form of cash flow, with no thought of his students as anything more than simply means to an end. With time, however, his attitudes change. Our assignment was to list at least 3 positive and 3 negative attitudes or actions that Mr. Holland had or did that either hindered or helped his teaching, managing his classroom, or connecting with the students and others. Some of the negative things he did were as follows. 1. He began teaching with a bad attitude about his job, even resenting the school day starting too early in the morning. His attitude interfered with his relationship with his principal and vice principal. Also, the students could sense Holland's lack of desire to be there. He thought very poorly of his students, at one time describing them to his wife with frustration, saying that nobody can teach these children. This attitude hindered his connection with the students and the staff. 2. He berated his students after grading his students' first test. He became so very upset with their poor answers that he berated his students out loud in front of them all. He said the tests were pathetic, yelling at his students. He called out specific students by name, ridiculed them and their test answers, embarrassing them in front of their peers. Obviously, he never had any leadership training, as any good leader knows to praise in public and correct in private. He had no empathy as to where the students they were coming from, and did not realize that much of the responsibility for the poor grades was his, in that he did not ensure content and skill mastery in his students. Yelling is not a good way to connect or manage, and neither is ridicule. 3. He yelled at one of his students that talked in class. He called the student out loud a pest in front of the rest of the class. Although Holland was technically correct, the student was being a pest, Holland chose the wrong method of correction, and he applied it incorrectly, yelling. Again, his actions were hindering connection and good management. 4. His private tutoring of a female student led to an inappropriate relationship with her. Because he took such an interest in encouraging her gifting, she developed a crush on him. He made a proper choice not to run away with her. However, he did kiss her on the cheek. He also encouraged her to follow her dream of singing against her parents' wishes, and did not encourage her to obey her parents, or at least to try and negotiate with them. Well, he certainly connected, but in the wrong way. The positive things that he did as a teacher are as follows. 1. He took a personal interest in developing his students' talents and their futures, inspiring his students to develop their giftings and pursue use of them. For example, he praised Rowena's voice and encouraged her dream of becoming a singer. Michael Stadler, one of his very talented students who thought he knew all about music, was encouraged to use his talents properly and not to think more highly of himself than he should. That was good connecting. His students said he had a highly developed sense of humor. This is number 2. Obviously, something that had developed with time, and certainly wasn't there at the start of his employment. His students appreciated his humor, and it added to his presence and connection. 3. He came to know, relate to, and care for his students. So much so that he even went to a student's funeral years after the student had graduated high school. He used this as a learning opportunity for one of his students. 4. In order to get a marching band started, Holland traded marching lessons for his band in exchange for drum lessons for a probationary athlete, Lou Rusk. Originally, it was just a deal. Then it became personal for Holland, as he did whatever was necessary, differentiating his teaching methods, to teach the young man what he needed to know. In front of his fellow band students, Holland praised the rhythm-challenged young man on finding the beat of a song. This was not only encouraging to Lou, but drew the entire band into applause, congratulating one of their own. Making the deal was good management, because he certainly couldn't teach them to march himself. 5. He started a marching band for the football team. This not only pleased the students and their parents, but his superiors. Definite connection here. 6. He referred to his students as Miss and Mr. as a respectful courtesy, and he expected the same in return. This developed the student's respect for the teacher and helped increase his presence and connection. 7. At the end of the school orchestra's first practice of a musical piece, which was indeed a horrible presentation, he said, "Okay, good. Very good work." It was good for the students as it gave them hope and was not discouraging. 8. He offered personal instruction tutoring with a struggling clarinet student, Gertrude Lang. He went out of his way to find a means to get her to connect with her music, rather than just mechanically playing notes. This built great confidence in her, which I am sure was part of the reason she eventually became governor of the state. It also built in her a respect and gratitude toward her teacher, something she carried with her for the next 30 years. Good connection. 9. During Holland's summer job as a teacher in a driving school, when a student crashed a school car, he didn't scream and yell like he used to. He said, "Okay, what did we learn from this?" With this response, he turned what could have been a very ugly scene, by yelling and berating, into a learning moment. He managed this well. 10. He was willing to teach any form of music, even the proscribed rock and roll, in order to connect and engage with the students and give them an appreciation of the mechanics of music. This was approved by his principal. His persistence and willingness to try different methods until his students could actually learn was a trait of effective teaching and resulted in connection.